Welcome to the Calgary Herald video series. My name is Joe.
I'm Hart.
This is Hart. And so Hart is in the video today. He is my husband as well, and he does a lot of yoga because his wife is a yoga teacher, and probably on average like 5, maybe 6 classes a week for probably the last 4.5 years. But prior to that, Hart was no different than any of the other people who don't practice yoga. He was very tight, and even just sitting as he is now was a struggle. And sitting like his knees were up high, and when the hips are tight, that's what happens. So, but over time and with consistent practice, things open and change. And that's why we practice yoga. And yoga is for everybody. And I've heard a lot from a lot of my clients this week of like, how do I get my spouse to yoga? And they look at Hart and go, I know if my spouse came, he would feel that that's where, or she would feel that that's where they need to be. And what I want to say is that when you go to yoga class and you see someone who looks like they have a very good practice, that is from consistent and committed practice. That's what it is. It's not practice till perfect. It's practice for more practice. So I'm really grateful that Hart's here, and he's going to do some poses today that are just really basic. But basic does not mean easy, right? If I can say they're simple poses, but that doesn't mean they're not complicated. So we're going to start just from standing. And standing pose is, go ahead, is mountain pose. That's what it's called. So Tadasana in Sanskrit. And standing is complicated. It should be easy. We do it all the time. The only people in this world who are standing properly are little kids when they first start standing. You never see a child standing with their weight shifted onto one hip or, fidgeting when they're just starting. When they get to be about 4 things, maybe even 3 things are different, but when they first start standing, they're perfectly aligned. And so we practice standing so we can find that alignment again. So we start off with the feet pointing straight ahead. You're going to make sure that that's happening. And then Hart's going to push his feet down into the floor and lift his kneecaps up. So not like you're not pulling them up, it's just like a toning of the kneecaps up. And then he can draw his navel back to his spine, and he's going to turn his hands to face front. He's going to stretch his fingers long. And maybe on an inhale, he's going to see if he can lift his heart up. And as he exhales, can he press down from his hips into his feet? Looks really nice. Good. And then inhale and open your arms out to the side and take them all the way up. And just keep your arms shoulder distance apart, palms face each other. And this is Urdhva Hasta Tadasana, mountain pose with arms lifted. And as Hart inhales, he's going to reach up higher. He may even touch the ceiling there. And as he exhales, there's a softening. And it's almost like riding the waves of your breath. Yeah. And if you do this, simple little, but not easy, but simple little practice, and you do this for about 4 or 5 breaths, as you exhale and release your arms down by your sides, you're already going to feel the energy moving through you and that things have opened. That was really nice, Hart. Okay, so from here, you're going to place your hands on the floor and just step back and place your knees on the floor. Okay, and if you have tender knees, you can put a blanket or something underneath your knees here. And then, Hart's just going to check and make sure his knees are under his hips or even a little bit behind your hips. And then, again, a relatively simple pose, but not easy. There's a lot of things here that we need to be aware of. So your arms are shoulder distance apart, your fingers are spread, and all parts of your hands are pressing down into the floor. Now, Hart's tucked his toes under here. That's an instruction I often give because it helps to open the feet. So that's a really great thing. And from here, we're just going to move through cat and cow. So on an inhale, Hart's going to release his belly down. He's going to lift his sit bones up towards the sky and lift his chin. And as he exhales, he'll reverse into cat pose and draw the navel in, chin to the chest, and tailbone drops. And these 2 postures together are all about opening the hips, opening the shoulders, and getting the spine to start moving. And it's just simple, not necessarily easy, but very, very important. And you can do that. You can do about 10 cycles through. That's about 1 minute long. And you should feel pretty good. But this is a shorter video, so I'm just going to have Hart bring himself to a neutral spine. And from here, we're going to press to downward dog. But what I want you to do first, Hart, is walk your knees back even more from your hips so you have a longer table. And then walk your hands forward a little bit so you have a slant from your shoulders to your wrists. Okay, now before Hart presses up, he's just going to really ground his hands down. And on an inhale, he'll lift his knees up off the floor. And as he exhales, he's going to press back. Now, Hart's downward dog did not look like this when he first started yoga because the hamstrings are tight, the calf muscles were tight, his heels were nowhere near the floor. And if your back is rounding, here his back is pretty good. But if it's rounding, then you're going to bend your knees. So Hart, maybe bend your knees halfway and then push your hands away and lift your sit bones up higher. Yeah. So if you keep your knees bent while you do that, then you can lift your sit bones up nice and high. I know he's aching to straighten his legs because that's where he can go. So that's awesome. Go ahead, straighten your legs. And then press your thighs back and think inner thighs back and outer thighs back equally. Really nice. Okay, there's a lot more refinements you could do in downward dog. It's one of those poses we practice in almost every yoga class. And I've been doing this for 20 years, thereabout, and there's still lots to learn, which is what makes it exciting. But from here, Hart's going to inhale, he's going to lift his heels high. And as he exhales, he's going to take his knees all the way down to the floor. Now we're going to keep the toes tucked under. And again, I was mentioning how important it is to open the feet and have flexibility in your toes. And Hart's going to take his hips back to his heels, and he's going to come to sit on his heels. So the toes tucked under. Now when Hart first started yoga, he was nowhere near here. And so if this is very uncomfortable for you, then you can lift yourself up. So just show that, Hart, just come all the way up onto your, so you're just just all the way up. So this is great. You can do this, or you can bring the hips back to the heels and keep your hands on the floor so that you're not taking all the weight back into the heels. But if you can do this comfortably, then you lift yourself up and just sit for a few breaths. And that's great work. Good. And then from here we go to the opposite side. So Hart will bring his hands down to the floor. He's going to put the tops of his feet down, and he can shake his legs, his feet out a little bit. Sometimes you need to do that after you've been on your toes. And then he'll shift his hips back. And same thing. Now he's going to sit on the tops of his feet, stretch the tops of his feet. You've got some good knee flexion there. Good. And he's nice and straight. But again, when he first started, this is nowhere where he was. Yeah. And so you can lift yourself up. If you have a cushion, you can just put it in between. Sometimes that helps to relieve things. You can even put something underneath the tops of your feet. But these two poses together are really, really important for keeping not only the feet healthy and the toes open, but also keeping the calf muscle open and getting some hip flexion. Right? Little kids do this all the time naturally, which means you did too. So I don't know why we stopped. Awesome. Great. Okay, so that was a pretty quick practice, but that's a great one to do if you're starting. We finish every yoga practice off with Shavasana. And Shavasana is lying flat on your back. It's translated as corpse pose. This is actually one of the hardest poses in yoga when we first start, because as soon as the body starts to rest, guess what starts to go crazy? That's the thoughts. They start to go nuts. So I'm just going to lengthen Hart's neck here if I can. Yes, there we go. Good. Awesome. So I'm just going to leave Hart here in his Shavasana. Ideally, if you can rest here anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes, this is great practice. It's great practice to learn how to reset yourself, but that's for another day. So I'm going to say thank you to Hart and thank you to you for watching. Namaste.